Good evening, all. Dr. Creekmore here. At our last general meeting, it was our pleasure to have as our first Pro Talk speaker, the Honorable Milton Mack, a pioneer in the field of AOT and a moving force as the probate judge who made Kevin's Law in Michigan a workable basis for the implementation of AOT in his state, and I might add in other states as well. Tonight, we are privileged to have as our inaugural Peer Talk speaker, the first graduate of an AOT program in Ohio, Bradley Tarr. Some of you may have seen Bradley appear at the San Antonio National AOT Convention Symposium, sharing his experiences in front of an enthusiastic audience with Dupree and Eric, first names only, as participants in AOT in their respective communities. Bradley will speak to us tonight on the topic, Stopping the Revolving Door, how AOT helps the mentally ill stay out of hospitals, jail cells, and live a healthy and productive life. As a former philosophy major, I was intrigued, Bradley, by your interests in philosophy and theology about the assignment that the AOT judge gave you in AOT court in confronting your faith and the Roman faith about marriage. Sounds like an assignment my ethics teacher might have given me at William & Mary, though I am not a Roman Catholic. Bradley, we look forward to hearing what you have to share with us tonight about your experiences, and welcome.
Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, my name is Bradley Tarr. I'm almost entirely Polynesian, possibly distantly partly Chinese on my dad's side. And on my mom's side, I'm almost entirely Irish and Scottish on the Kelly side of my family. I was definitely given an easy assignment. One time, the Catholic canonical definition of marriage, I know someone that actually had to go up against debating Archbishop Charles J. Chaput on can lying ever be ethical in certain situations. So that was like a 3-hour debate. But my name is Bradley Tarr. I want to start off by saying what my life was like before the AOT program. My first episode, I am schizoaffective. I have schizoaffective disorder, which means that I have all of the symptoms of bipolarism and all the symptoms of schizophrenia mixed together. That can include delusions, delusions of grandeur, hallucinations, hypermanic symptoms, hypomanic symptoms. I can hear things that aren't there. I can see things that aren't there. And my first episodic event ever happened when I was in the 4th grade at Belleville Elementary School. And we were actually on a field trip to the local Belleville public library. And I started hearing things and seeing things, hearing voices that weren't there. And basically they were just voices at that point that were taunting me and mocking me and making me and basically harassing me. And it ended up giving me a huge manic hypertension headache. And my sister, they called home. My dad called the high school because my dad was very busy with work that day. I think he was organizing a tournament that day or something, but he was very busy that day. And he called over to the Clear Fork High School, and my sister Andrea actually ended up coming to pick me up from school and helping me get home safe. And of course, at that point, my family thought maybe it was just a panic attack or maybe it was just an anxiety attack. But looking back, it was definitely the symptoms of auditory hallucinations and also a hypertension manic headache. So life before AOT involved a lot of bad psychiatrists. And I don't say bad because they weren't smart or they weren't well educated, and I'm not even saying that they're like somehow like evil or malicious or wicked human beings. What I mean by that is I felt like I was always a patient number and a quota before AOT. So from 4th grade all the way through 12th grade and even up until the age of about 26, before I entered AOT, I felt like, and sometimes they would even say this, that they were trying to fill quotas with the certain meds that they were putting me on. That's why I was put on Remeron from 4th grade through 7th grade. That's why during high school I was put on Depakote, turned me into a zombie. I was put on Risperdal for a while, turned me into a zombie. I was put on Lexapro to fill a quota. Lexapro gave me an unprovoked side effect of rage, and I busted open my mom's walls and cabinets. And we know that it was a side effect of rage because we looked it up on the insert that they give you for Lexapro, and I had absolutely no. It was like the middle of the summer. I had no reason to be angry at anyone that day. It was entirely unprovoked. So my high school symptoms would range from, again, brain hypertension, visual hallucinations, audible hallucinations. I would go through delusions. One time I was 20 miles north of the city of Mansfield on Interstate 71, walking north, and I was wearing no shoes, and I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, even though it was early April, because I was convinced that excuse me, I was convinced that I had to walk all the way to Cleveland because in Cleveland there would be a massive Billy Graham crusade, and I would help claim Ohio for Christ with Billy Graham. I often wonder whether that delusion, if it were to happen today, would be me wanting to meet up with Cardinal Burke or me wanting to meet up with Bishop Robert Barron. But back at this time, I was still very Protestant, very evangelical. So, of course, the delusion goes to someone like Billy Graham. So my relationship with my mom, my dad, and my siblings from fourth grade through 12th grade was very amicable, for the most part, pretty neutral. But at that point, they really didn't understand what was wrong with me. We didn't have a firm diagnosis during this period. It would go from, oh, he's manic depressive, oh, he's chronic depressive, he's bipolar 1, he's bipolar 2. A couple of times, one of the psychiatrists at the hospital simply said he has unspecified mood disorder, which I've learned enough about a little bit of medicalese over the years, and that's just him saying that he doesn't know for sure. I can laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny then because back then I was in the middle of between freshman and senior year of high or freshman and junior between freshman and junior year of high school. I was in and out of the county hospital about 12 or 13 times. I tried finishing a bachelor's degree at college 2 times with 2 different colleges. Once with KCU, with Kentucky Christian University in the fall of 2012, and again I did another semester in the spring semester of 2014. And I tried a second time at Magdalen College of the Liberal Arts, which was about 30 minutes outside of Concord, New Hampshire. And I often like to say I got a couple semesters of Protestant education and a couple semesters of a Catholic education. Both times I was unable to finish because I would go through severe insomnia/paranoia, manic episodes where, for instance, at Magdalen, I went about 3 days without sleep, and I ended up spending 2 weeks in a New England hospital. In 2015, I converted to the Roman Catholic faith, and my faith very much, I like to say, it gives me a lot of tools for managing my schizoaffective symptoms, like the rhythmic prayers of the Rosary, the rhythmic prayers of Gregorian chant. I like to call my weekly appointment for confession with a priest. I like to call it free therapy because it very much is. It very much is free therapy. I mean, you feel like you have the weight of the world lifted off your chest when you can open up to your pastor about how you fell short that week and how you guys can make up a game plan for how you go forward with the next week. In 2016, when I came back from Magdalen, I was so symptomatic with both delusions and hearing voices that for several weeks I was estranged from my mom, my dad, and from all of my siblings because I was just so extreme with my symptoms, they didn't know what to do with me. So I spent several weeks at the Catalyst Life Services homeless unit And there were several people in there that were very, very much far sicker than even I was. Um, and and there were several physical threats, several death threats. And I ended up, instead of punching someone else that was making the threats, I ended up punching a hole in the wall of the homeless shelter, and that landed me on 14 months of mental health court probation, where I was drug and alcohol tested about 2 or 3 times a week, even though I personally have never had a drug or alcohol problem. But a lot of times in the Mansfield area, when you try to tell a judge and you try to tell your probation officer and your counselors that you've never had a drug or alcohol problem, kind of understandably, they don't believe you. But So I ended up paying almost $1,000 in restitution for the wall, and I went through 14 months of weekly schizophrenia classes, which the schizophrenia classes didn't teach me anything about schizophrenia that I didn't already know since the age of 11, because once I figured out that I could possibly be any of these things at the age of 11, I consumed knowledge about what it meant for me. Um, I had to go through weekly anger management. I will say I had some positive memories with the 14 months of anger management class, and there are still some lessons I received in anger management that still help me today to stay calm and to stay even keel with my moods, especially if I do experience any type of manic or depressive mood swings over a day or over a few days. So I won't say that there was no positive impact with the mental health court probation program, but overall it was negative because I had to pay $175 for the drug and alcohol tests at the end of it. There was just a lot of unnecessary burdens and unnecessary baggage. And if I didn't make it to any of these things during mental health court probation program, and sometimes I would have to walk about halfway across the county to get to these things because I didn't have a license at that point and I didn't have my own car at that point. So if I didn't make it to any of those things, regardless of what the weather was, I was faced with 30 days in the county jail. Um, and me personally, that's kind of like a sticking point with me where I will always try my best not to end up locked up for criminal type things. So yeah, like I was kind of like almost like the star pupil of the whole mental health court system for those 14 months because I mean I really towed the line. And then I actually did well from 2017 when I graduated the mental health court program to early 2019. But from January to May of 2019, I went through what I call my most super symptomatic season, where I had visual hallucinations, I had olfactory hallucinations, I had audible hallucinations, I had severe delusions. My delusions would range from thinking I was the director of the NSA to thinking I was the Secretary of Defense to thinking I was the Secretary of State to thinking that I was a spokesman for the Vatican. So again, my faith shows up in my delusions. I would think that I was an MI6 007 agent and that traffic couldn't hurt me, which as you could probably tell is a very dangerous delusion to have. I had an olfactory hallucination, a smelling hallucination for a couple of weeks that my mom smelled to me like an open sewer, and that made me paranoid and terrified about being around my mom. My mom didn't do anything wrong. That was just an olfactory hallucination I had about my own mother. So at one point, my family told me that I had actually spent more from January to May, early May of 2019. I had actually spent more time in the hospital than I had at home, which is really sad. And what actually eventually happened in May was rate, and they explained for about 2 how what the assisted treatment and how sure the mental health court probation program and gave a choice of either A, I could spend about 2.5 years at the Maslin State Psychiatric Hospital, or B, I could spend spend a year and a half to 2 years in the AOT program, being outside of the hospital. And they told me about how the AOT program would try its best to help me to thrive and be productive and have a positive lifestyle, and to not only be out of the hospital, but to try and stop this revolving door of myself and hospitalizations and myself and bad run-ins with the police. Because you can tell that, like, if you're walking from town to town, or you're walking on the interstate in the middle of the night in early April with no shoes on and only a t-shirt and shorts on, of course you have run-ins with the Mansfield police, you have run-ins with Belleville police, you have run-ins with the State Highway Patrol. And at one point, a highway patrolman stopped me in the middle of a town and said, "Buddy, do you need a ride somewhere today?" And this was like a couple of years ago, and I'm like, "No, I actually have my own car and my own license now. I'm just walking, to the Dollar General and back. I'm just getting a couple things." Like, "Man, the last thing we want is to see you on the highway again." And I'm like, "Oh man, that brings back some memories." He's like, "Yeah," he's like, "We just want what's best for you, buddy." Um, so yeah, so I signed the consent forms to enter AOT because I really, like, I'm a big, like, walking and hiking and driving outdoorsy type of person. So I did not want to be in the psychiatric hospital for a little over 2 years. So I signed the papers, and sometimes people will ask me, "Did you feel coerced or pressured into AOT?" I felt kind of like, for lack of a better word, wooed into AOT. I felt invited into AOT. I felt encouraged into AOT, and it was actually a huge act of mercy that they offered me my freedom free of charge, and wanted to increase the quality and the productiveness and the safety and the well-being of my freedom, rather than putting me in a state hospital for a little over 2 years. So I felt very much like AOT was an opportunity that was presented to me. And yes, I had to sign the papers, but I did not feel in any way threatened or pressured or coerced in doing it. And at that point, I was willing to try any mental health wellness program that they said would be better than what I experienced in the past, because whether it was what I experienced at Akron Children's Hospital in fourth grade, what I experienced at Med Central, or what I experienced, my personal experience with the Mansfield Mental Health Court, I said, like, it can't get any worse than what I've already been through. So if they're saying that they're going to put their best foot forward to make it better, then I'm going to take that chance. And it paid off. Because life during AOT, with mental health court and with a lot of other things in my life, people said, either you make it to this, or you'll be punished, or you make it to this. But at AOT, once a week, my case manager would meet up with me, and he said, "I can give you counseling for a little over an hour, and then for the next hour, I can drive you anywhere you need to go in the entire county, whether it's to get groceries or to get a present for your nephews or nieces for Christmas or birthday, or whether you need your lithium blood levels checked, or whether you need to." He said, literally anything under the sun. You get an hour of being able to get counseling and talk therapy for whatever you want to talk about, and another hour of me being able to drive you literally anywhere in the county for any reason you need to go there, even if it's a recreational reason. He said, if you want to go to the reservoir, or you want to go to Gorman Nature Center and we walk around the nature center for a little bit and talk a little bit more, that's fine too. And that was a night and day difference. In AOT, I was given what I call the five essential members of any AOT team, and that's one, the judge; two, the case manager; three, the guardian ad litem; four, the talk therapist counselor; and five, the psychiatrist. So my psychiatrist that I was given with AOT. Another thing about my spring 2019 super symptomatic season I didn't share before is that from November of 2018 to February of 2019, late January, early February of 2019, I had four emergency crisis appointments with my former psychiatrist, Dr. Karen. But she was not even in Ohio. She was at her lake house in Florida, and she was Skyping me for our emergency appointments. She refused to change my meds because of quotas. She refused to change the dosage of my meds, and she refused to admit that anything was wrong, even though I felt these really bad symptoms that were persisting in my mind and in my nervous system coming on. Like I just knew that I was getting bad again. But when I was put into AOT, I was given a new doctor, and it was a doctor that she actually went through all of my medical records and psychological records from the ages of 11 to 26, and she gave me a firm and reliable diagnosis. Finally, that she was the first person to do it. That she gave me the diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, and she put me on a mixture of lithium, 800 milligrams of lithium a day, Zyprexa, and Cogentin, and it was the exact meds. Like one of them is to treat my manic symptoms, the other one is to treat depressive symptoms, and the third one is to treat the schizophrenia symptoms. And it was a mixture of meds that was tailor made for me based on all the information that she reviewed about me, which was like a stack of papers about this thick. So that was my psychiatrist. My case manager, Dupree, I've also a little bit talked about already, but Dupree was just my sounding board, my confidant, and he was meeting up with me once a week to improve the quality of my life. My guardian ad litem, I was given an attorney pro bono that got all my student loan debt forgiven. He got a lot of other debt that I owed to other people forgiven. He got so many things straightened out for me legally and financially. And he also educated me on how to better handle my finances. And then I was given a judge, and the judge, what they often nickname the black robe effect. He keeps the whole team accountable and keeps the whole mission churning for improving a life and improving the well-being of the patient. And then I was given a counselor talk therapist that I met with once a week. And again, if I couldn't drive myself there, they would drive me there. Um, and the counselor talk therapist was just like, a lot of people don't realize that when someone is manic, they have racing thoughts and they talk really fast. And she was the type of professional that had a master's degree in the type of counseling for people that have manic symptoms. Like she had a specialization in how to untangle all the racing thoughts that I had and help me make sense of them. So and yeah, so I talked about case manager, psychiatrist, guardian ad litem, talk therapist. But yeah, but those are the five members of the team. I can't remember the fifth one right now, but I did mention all five before, and I always try to emphasize to people that, in my opinion, what really makes AOT as a program work is four principles. I kind of water it down to these four principles, and I distill it down to these four principles, which I call PDIP, which they have actual passion for what they're doing. They treat you with human dignity, that's the D. They treat you with intrinsic integrity and value and worth as a person. They treat the whole process of AOT with accountability and integrity between themselves as well. And they treat you with personalism. Like I said, you're not a number, you're not a quota, you're not a spreadsheet. You are an actual individual, a person that they are trying to help thrive and help to move forward in their life with a holistic system of wellness that they want to put in place. I often like to emphasize to people that for me, there's a tripod, what I call a tripod of wellness, and that's community, exercise, and meds. And these three things are not opposed to one another, and they're not contradictory to one another. If you remove someone from any type of community, eventually they'll go sick. If you remove someone from absolutely all exercise, eventually they'll get worse as a person and maybe go depressive or go sick. And if you try to live as someone who is severely schizophrenic, bipolar or severely schizoaffective without meds, you will go very, very ill. You will go very, very episodic and symptomatic. So I always tell people that there is a tripod of wellness that is community, exercise, and meds. So I have a list here about how to productively help and interact with the mentally ill. And this is the framework that in my experience was used within AOT. Transportation, free transportation for their needs, uh, frequent checkups, talk therapy, giving them goals, giving them schedules, giving them organization skills. If needs be, giving them some form of welfare or food stamps or SSI disability payments. That's another thing that my guardian at Lightem, uh, my attorney helped me to do, was to get me signed up for SSI disability. Give them community connections, whether it's church or whether it's some type of men's group or women's group. Give them workout routines that they can rely on. Give them maybe tell them to invest in journaling their thoughts or drawing out their thoughts. So journaling and drawing. Daily prayer if they are a religious person, and accountability. So one of the things that helps someone that is struggling with a mental illness is to teach them how to be daily accountable to themselves and their own conscience, but also how to take responsibility for cooperating with how they can get better. Because I don't I don't want to I don't want to water down what we go through, what we mentally ill people go through. But I also don't want to say that absolutely every shortcoming or mistake that I make is somehow everybody else's fault. So you kind of have to balance those two things out into a happy medium. And lastly, I just want to say that the final tool, and they did this in spades in the AOT program for me in Richland County, that you show patience and you show compassion to the mentally ill, even if at first they don't respond well to treatment. I have a list here of things that mental illness is not, and I like to put this into any of my talks. Mental illness is not an excuse. It is not a weakness. It is not a fleeting emotional snit. A lot of people like to caricature mental illness as that, like, well, dude, like everybody has mood swings, like get over yourself. But when you're someone who's bipolar, your manic symptoms or your depressive symptoms can last for days or even weeks. It's not a fleeting emotional snit. It is not laziness. Mental illness is not lack of motivation. It is not lack of intelligence. It is not lack of faith. It is not a crime. Even though sometimes when they are desperate or delusional or hallucinatory, we can commit things that are criminal in nature, but the actual illness is not a crime. And lastly, mental illness is not a reason to be marginalized or ostracized. Um, I will say our society and culture has gotten a lot better at not marginalizing or ostracizing the mentally ill. Uh, I've had more than one person in my family tell me that they're just glad that I was born in 1993 and not 1893, because they thought that if I was born a century earlier, I may have been like lobotomized or somehow some other way, experimented on. So we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. I just want to mention that 37% approximately of all United States prisons and approximately 44% of all county jails are filled are the people that are in those cells are SMI, severely mentally ill people, and we must do better and be better to those people. How I always like to say, how do we gain the trust of an episodic person? So I always tell people the first thing you should do is try to ground someone in what's actually going on. So telling them, I'm the only one that's here talking to you. Are you hearing any other voices? Like, what are you experiencing? What are you seeing? And these are very simple ways in which we can gain the trust of someone in an episodic person. And I always tell people the last thing that should always be done is using any type of intimidation or physical force against someone who's mentally ill, unless they're like, I mean, if they're lunging for someone, that's one thing, but gaining the trust of someone starts with viewing them with intrinsic human value and dignity and work. It goes back to PDIP with the treating them with dignity and treating them with personalism. That gaining someone's trust should not be so that they can be a case study. It's so that we can take the humanity in them and help it to flourish. That's the end of page 3. I want to say real quick that court orders can be a good thing. So when people ask me, were you court ordered into AOT? I'm like, yeah, I was brought before a magistrate. But like I said, it was a great mercy and a great help and a much better alternative to anything else that was available to me at that moment. I was so severely hallucinatory and delusional and hypermanic and insomniatic and paranoid at the time I went before that magistrate that they had me like, in the jumpsuit and in the fetters, the shackles of my wrists and ankles to take me to the psychiatric hospital. But they're like, we have one more way to ensure your freedom. And that's really what that court order did, is it gave me my freedom back. It didn't take it away. Probation versus AOT. So probation court and criminal court are different from AOT. AOT is a civil court. You can't even be held in contempt of court if you're before an AOT judge. And in probation court, I wasn't given a guardian ad litem. I wasn't given a professional talk therapist. I wasn't given a psychiatrist that truly cared about me as a person. I was given all these things in AOT, and it really was a night and day difference between the two. And one more note on AOT psychiatrists. My psychiatrist with AOT had to actually go through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of papers because at that point, when I was in 2019, I had been hospitalized well over 25 times throughout my life. And she went through every single one of those files of every single one of those hospitalizations. And it takes everybody in the cogs of AOT and the cogs of any program or system like this to buckle down and truly care. And that's what makes it work. And that's why I always say that the proof is in the pudding. So whether it's me or whether it's the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other people whose lives have been saved and quality of life has been improved with AOT, the proof is in the pudding that, yes, other types of superior support groups are good. Other types of accountability groups are good. But AOT is very much, it's baked into the DNA of what we can do at state levels to improve the overarching system of how we deal with the mentally ill. And I always try to tell people another thing about court orders is that with Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous or anger management therapy, there have been many, many, many programs before AOT, generations before AOT, that were court ordered, but many, like literally legions of people that have gone through AA or NA or anger management, and they come out the other side, or they're still going to the accountability groups, will tell you that court orders can save lives. My life since AOT. So I've been on several state advisory councils for AOT implementation since I was in AOT. I was at the National Symposium, as was mentioned before, but in the advisory councils, I helped to implement AOT in Florida, Kentucky, and Missouri. I've advocated for AOT and other mental health reform bills that are in some way related to SMI in Washington, twice in Washington State, in Maryland, in Massachusetts, and I think one other state, but I can't remember which. It might have been Missouri, but I'm not sure. But don't call me on that. But yeah, I've been before several state legislatures. Oh, the other one was Ohio. Yeah, I went for House Bill 249 for the state of Ohio, which would give more police departments than the Ohio State Highway Patrol more leeway to pink slip people to get evaluated at the hospital and possibly be put into mental health programs. The Ohio State Highway Patrol, when they caught up with me on I-71 that cold April morning at 4 a.m, they didn't have the authority to take me to the hospital. All they could do was take me home. So we need mental health bills in place that will give uh, intervention teams more authority to get people the help that they desperately need. Um, AOT gave me my longest period of mental, emotional, financial, and familial stability. It has improved the quality of the relationships with me and my mom, me and all six of my siblings, my cousins, and even my grandmas. Um, and it has given me the tools and the knowledge and the resources to effectively communicate to them when I'm having a bad day or I'm having a bad week, or oh, January to April is usually my worst months of the year when it comes to my symptoms. To this day, I can call my psychiatrist's office, and if I feel I'm in crisis, within 48 hours, she is meeting with me to either A, rearrange my meds, the dosage of my meds, or change my meds, or B, maybe put me in the hospital for a week or so, just so that they can arrange my meds while I'm in the safe environment of the hospital. But also, almost 5 years later, I have not had to visit the hospital one single time since I've been in AOT, and that I think speaks for itself. Like I said, the proof is in the pudding that it's given me the most stability overall for the quality of my life. Um, I've, like I said before, mental health reforms have come a long way, but I feel like we have much more work to do, and we are far, far from done. I work a lot with NAMI and with Treatment Advocacy Center. Treatment Advocacy Center has plans and goals for AOT to eventually not only push for AOT in all 50 states, especially in our major cities, but not only in all 50 states, but then to expand to Canada and to expand to the entire English speaking Anglosphere, and then to work out from there. We have not only national advisory plans in the works, but we're trying to push for AOT, or at least something extraordinarily similar to AOT, in as many countries as we can. And and I also work a lot with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. I do crisis intervention team CIT talks, and we have big plans for expanding CIT throughout all the counties of Ohio for all of our police departments and our EMT departments, and we're thinking about even expanding into the fire departments as well. So that's really, really exciting. So yeah, we've come a long way, but there's far more things to be done. We have much more to do. That's all I have for you guys today, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bradley. That was very powerful. We have a few questions in the queue we're going to ask of you, starting with, what did you like about the program and how can it still improve?
What I liked most about the program was that they took a vested interest in what I liked and in what I was involved in, and how they could help me to get even better at being a reader, better at being a writer, uh, better at learning more about my passions, what I was passionate about. That's what I most liked. What I most liked when it came to the five essential members, I have to say probably Dupree and Judge Mayer were probably my two favorite people throughout that time of my life. They were just so central to helping me get better and to stay better. The one thing that I thought maybe that they could do better was they didn't really help me get on food stamps, even though even though even though I asked a few times. But they didn't really seem like they had a lot of the negotiating knowledge to kind of make the case to the state that maybe SSI sometimes isn't enough. My mom and I also have trouble affording groceries sometimes. So, maybe that little thing could be better. But my overall impression of AOT when I was in it was pretty positive.
The next question we have is, did you feel coerced at all while in the AOT program?
Did I feel coerced at all? To be honest, I felt like the opposite of coerced when I was in the program. I felt like thoroughly helped. Yeah, just no better way to say it. I felt thoroughly helped, where they helped me to learn. They helped me. And to be honest, they helped me to be teachable, because if you were to meet Bradley from 2018, and he was actually a much more arrogant person, so they kind of helped me to be teachable and to be humble too. Yeah, I definitely didn't feel coerced.
If you could share anything with those going into an AOT program or exiting one, what would it be?
My biggest word of advice for those just entering would be, AOT is like Novocaine. If you give it enough time, it always works. Um, so it's like an airplane taking off. There may be a little bit of turbulence while you're going up, but once you get to cruising altitude in the AOT program, it's very, very safe, and it's very, very good for you. One word of advice for those exiting is, this is only the beginning. Like, it's not just the end of a chapter, it's the beginning of another. And don't close yourself off to chances and to opportunities. And don't close yourself off from realizing that you can not only be healthy, but you can actually positively have an improved way of living life.
That's excellent. And another question we have regarding your faith. Um, Now that you've found a measure of balance, how do you distinguish God's voice from other voices?
Um, the Catholic faith is actually very helpful in this regard, because if I'm hearing it, in the Catholic faith, there are such things as private revelations, but very, very, very few of the purported private revelations are even approved by the church at all. But for me, if I hear any type of voice or delusional thinking that contradicts scripture, like the 73 Catholic books of the Catholic Bible, if it's like directly contradicts scripture, then it's not his will. If it directly contradicts sacred tradition as unfurled and developed by the Catholic Church over the past 2,000 years, then it's not from the Holy Spirit. But also, there's a long history of a lot of Catholic canonized saints that would say things like, "It is better to turn away a demon," or they would say, "It is better to accidentally turn away Christ than to accidentally welcome in a demon." So, like, there have actually been times where a monk or a bishop or a saint or a pope thought that maybe an angel or Christ or whoever had appeared to them, but they would rather turn away someone, even if it was the real person, than to welcome in something that's really dark and malevolent. And also for me, as a Catholic, like, I go off of the 73 books of the Bible. I go off of the official catechism of the Catholic Church. I go off of things like papal encyclicals and reliable sacred scripture, reliable sacred tradition, and reliable devotional prayer practices. And for me, as a Catholic, it's not about what I'm feeling or sensing in the moment. It is about what's been proven dogmatically and doctrinally over the centuries to be reliable.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Another question comes in. They say, I have schizophrenia. I have not been hospitalized in over 30 years. I credit this to learning what my symptoms are and when to ask for help. This is commonly referred to as psychoeducation. Do you feel that learning more about the symptoms and nature of your mental illness is the major reason you are better able to manage your illness now?
That's, yeah, like 100%. Like, I agree with what they just said. Like, the thing with me is that it's really good. Like, one thing that my talk therapist and my case manager and my psychiatrist have all given me the tools to be able to tell, like, Like, for instance, if I ever go even a single night without any sleep, red flag. They've helped me to like be able to uproot or to nip in the bud like certain delusional ways of thinking. I think in some circles, like in some accountability groups like anger management and Alcoholics Anonymous, they call them like thinking errors, where like you can have certain like rationalizations or justifications or the me thinking error. And you can have a lot of those types of thinking errors, but they're delusional in nature. And I've gotten better at just dismissing delusional thought patterns, nipping them in the bud than letting them to take root. So yeah, that psychological education is a big part of it.
Thank you for your answer, Bradley. Thank you. Thank you for those answers. And I don't see any further questions at this time. So I'm going to turn it over. We are tremendously grateful for your time and sharing with us all about AOT tonight. And I'm going to turn it over, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to turn it over to and our executive director.
Bradley, thank you so much for that informative presentation on AOT and your continued advocacy for those with serious mental illness. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak.